Ajuri, go ahead.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Mr. Soyebi, I want to ask you two questions quickly. I'm going to start with this one. The other day, we had the chairman of the House Committee on Justice, Mr. Razak Atuma, on the program, and he was essentially defending the amendment to the Electoral Act taken by the Federal House of Representatives to the effect that the order of the elections would be changed. Now, I want to ask you clearly, sir, after that day, the next day, there was a headline on This Day that said clearly that INEC would be heading to the Supreme Court if, after harmonization between the Senate and House committees on the amendment, that they will go to the Supreme Court for clarification. Now, are you ready to do that, or should we take what was said the next day when INEC said it'll just abide by whatever comes out of the harmonization process?
Well, I thank you, because you are telling us that's the AIC account. I'm sure that's a reporter's interpretation of our stand. We don't challenge the law. That's exactly what going to court is all about. If a law is now promulgated, we have no right to challenge that particular law. We can't. We are a creation of the law too. I said it clearly here that it happened in the past when there was no law, when it was not in the law, we challenged it. But the moment, and it was a legal challenge, not personal or the commission's challenge, what we said was that this was against the law. If it's within the law, definitely we have to abide by it, because as I said in the first instance, we don't create the law, we don't make laws, we obey the law.
Mr. Soyebi, let me be a bit more clear with my question then. The Electoral Act, in this case, being amended, is essentially, there's an argument out there that this would essentially remove or disempower INEC from its constitutional responsibility and empowerment to organize elections as stipulated in both Section 78 of the Constitution and in the third schedule, Part 1 of the Constitution. I want to ask you, sir, yes, while you obey the Electoral Act once it comes out, in your view, is the Constitution being in any way undermined by the Electoral Act, and is that not the grounds upon which INEC could potentially go to the Supreme Court for clarification?
That's the unfortunate part of the whole story. The Constitution supports that particular amendment. We looked at the Constitution and we discovered that we are told to conduct elections according to the Constitution and the Electoral Act. The amended Constitution does exactly what it says, that we must conduct election according to the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and the Electoral Act. If there is an amendment to the Act, we have no choice but to obey it.
Right. So there's this video, I know you must have heard about it, which is circulating online. They see people up north practicing how to use some electronic voting machine. Could you tell us about it? Have you seen the video? What was going on?
No, I haven't. I've not seen the video, but I want to tell you that as of today, the Commission has not even come up with anything like electronic voting machine. You have not even come up with it.
Are you going to come up with it?
I'm telling you, and I can tell you categorically, that the probability of us coming up with it is nil. Because we have to pilot it. We have just about a year to the election. We have to procure it. We're talking about 130,000 polling units, for goodness sake. We have not even tested it. We are still talking about, we have not signed our register. We have to marry this with the machine.
Because I'm wondering, because the elections are really very close, and if we're having all these developments and all these changes that are happening almost so dynamically, are you in touch with the political parties themselves? What are they telling you concerning what their fears are regarding the 2019 elections?
Well, let me just say this. For the first time, we have structured meetings with political parties. In the next few weeks, we are going to have the first quarter meeting with them, not just with political parties, with the civil society organizations, with media, and with various stakeholders, with security. We are going to have their buy into this, but we are mixing this up with the law. There's nothing anybody can do about the law once it comes into law. That is just the...
So that's the amendments?
The amendment, once it comes, there's very little or nothing anybody can do about it. All we have to do is just obey it.
Okay, but let me quickly ask you this, categorically now. will we be voting electronically in 2019?
Well, okay. Voting, the register is electronic. The accreditation is electronic. The voter identification is electronic. Part of the transmission is, in fact, the transmission is going to be electronic. We've started piloting this electronic transmission. We've been doing it in the past too, but this time around we are going to scan elections. We are going to scan results from the polling units down to the central server in 2019. We piloted it in Sokoto. For the Anambra election, we piloted. What we are trying to do is just to make sure we pilot and see the problems associated with some of these things. We have been using them. The only aspect of it that is manual is just balloting.
So there's no full electronic
we
yet?
can't have 100% as of now. No.
Is this piloting in partnership with the NCC?
No, we are trying to have their buy-in into this process. We visited them yesterday, and we try to see how we can come in. We want to see which of their, we want to see all these service providers, which ones are better suited for equipment. You will say that when we had the smart card readers, we didn't pilot.
Okay.
So we didn't know which one was good. But now,
all right, let me jump into this next particular voter registration. A lot of people say they've gone to their local governments, they can't get the cards. Some say when they register, they tell them to come back in 1 month. What is the process? How does one get his permanent voter card?
Oh, to add to that, some people get to the polling unit as early as 5. They don't get to the document. The registration centers. They're not getting the documents until about 9, and then they're told to come back in the afternoon. What exactly is?
In fact, in Abuja, I must confess to you, some even spend 3 days.
3 days.
That is the paucity of funds. One thing we know is that this is the true continuous voters registration. We do it on a daily basis now. People are trooping out, but we are limited by funds.
How much is it?
The amount of funds that we need to procure the machines that will go around the desired areas will be probably about 20 times of what we have.
How much are you spending now?
Well, in last year's budget, we had 1.2 billion. If you had gone round the whole, let me just give you that type of figure. If you had tried to do it in all the polling units, that was the amount we would have spent in 1 day. And then we started last year, that's 1 day. That was why we now tailored our needs to meet what we have. What we do now is to do that. We started with local government areas, which was which was not too friendly. We now expanded the scope by having about 2 machines. Now we've gone down to even rotational registration. But the demand is higher than what we have. That is what we are saying. He asked about the collection of cards. Those people that have registered, we have not printed your cards. We have about, ongoing now, we have about 4 million cards that we are printing. And once they are out, like we did in Anambra, we'll revise our modalities for distribution, and of course this is going to be more friendly than what we had in the past.
Right. So certainly we'll have to revisit this matter in the days ahead, because there's so many people who have questions about their particular situation getting their permanent voter cards. But we have to thank you for coming on this morning. Mr. Solomon Shoyebe is a National Commissioner in charge of voter education and publicity for INEC. We'll be back in a moment. Join us again.